Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Joseph Brown. I'm an associate professor at Annapolis University. You might hear a little bit of noise from outside. It's early Monday morning. I've been up since 6 a.m. and I've been thinking about a couple of things to do with my class that I have every single Friday, talking about what's going on with academic research for graduate students. It's a wonderful class that we've been having there, and got my morning tea, which I'll have a sip. You might hear some noise from outside from them clearing the snow. But I wanted to talk a little bit about something that came up in class on Friday, and that's out of the literature review section. And we were talking about literature reviews, and inevitably what came up is the issue of plagiarism and kind of copying in general, because the literature review is one of those places where you're very likely to see just copy paste into the document from there. And so this is something that comes up then on the Turnitin report or on just reading through a student's thesis, where you say, okay, wait, you can't just copy this. You have to actually put it into your own words and do some paraphrasing and do some standing around that. So we're doing a lot of work on that. But plagiarism is an academic boogeyman. And I'm going to cite my reference on that because this is actually coming out of Tara Brazerhorn's comments upon the issue of academic plagiarism, that this has now become this big boogeyman. It's the thing that comes out of the closet and steals the graduate student in the middle of the night. They're in a culture of fear. That's the hypothesis that she has, and I share that hypothesis. I share that conclusion that we are in a bit of a culture of academic fear around, I made this action, was it okay? And I think that part of that is stemming from the issue. The root cause, I don't think, is just people are out to cheat. I don't think that any academic sitting around, any graduate student says, I would like to do this, please. I think that certain actions put you in a position to have that happen. I think that it comes out of a lack of education and rule systems. And I think even there, when it comes to education and rule systems, I don't think we have a good idea as supervisors and as people that are enforcing these rules that we've put in place, or even creating the rules that we've put in place. I don't think that we have a good idea of what that standard is or what that should be. And I think another piece of this is we see this kind of metricization of citations, that cites are now an academic currency rather than just what they're meant to do, which is to basically draw upon the body of knowledge in front of us and give credit to those academic forebearers that brought us this great knowledge that we're then in dialogue and conversation with. And I think that that's the other piece of this, is we seem to talk about citation as this thing that you do, this action that you make upon the thing that you have written, rather than it being kind of a natural piece of the document and how the document is framed as a dialogue, as a conversation in the greater space. And when you frame it as a conversation, when you frame it in that way and contextualize it as a conversation, then what you're really doing is you're allowing the conversational partner into the room. And you're showing, who are you in conversation with? Who are you talking with? Who are you drawing from? This morning I was watching a documentary, or a critique, I guess, more, on the creation of the song How Soon Is Now by the Smiths. And I'm a big fan of the song How Soon Is Now by the Smiths. And I'll link, again, the video in the description, so that way you guys can also go and watch this. But I think that there is a hypothesis by this author of this video that is talking about kind of the plagiarism that's inherent within Morrissey, or by Morrissey and by Johnny Marr, members of the Smiths, inside of their work. And this is a criticism that has been pushed about Morrissey's writings and work as a lyricist for many, many years, that there's some amount of plagiaristic actions within his work. So I want to begin by saying kind of like, what do we define plagiarism as being? And it's kind of like not crediting someone's work and then subsuming those words, saying those words as if you are the author of those words. So you're not just referencing what they're saying and saying so and so said this. You're saying I said this. And I think that if you take that sort of epistemology of how do we know that this is plagiarism, that I don't think Morrissey really fits into this. So now we can move into more of how do things relate, the ontology. So how soon is now we can see as being a song. Now, it's a little bit hard to kind of say, okay, are we copying a song? And I want to move aside from the issue of, is this guitar riff exactly the same as the notes over here? I'm going to put that aside because I want to focus on the Morrissey section that's referenced and not the work of Johnny Marr and the rest of the band of the Smiths. So if I put aside just the lyrics, then what I would do is treat this as lyric poetry. So from that standpoint, lyric poetry is anything having to do with lyrics, and it comes and stems from the word lyre. Not lyre as in he lied to me, but lyre as in the musical instrument of a lyre. So this is poetry with musical accompaniment, with a lyre in the background. And so if we treat it in this way, we now have a text that we are analyzing. And a lot of the references that are used inside of this other video commentary are texts that lines of this poem have been taken from these texts, is the thesis. The first one, so now we have basically said, okay, here's how these things relate. So now we go into, okay, let's use a methodology. Let's look at this and put it together and say, okay, how do we now say, if we know that this is plagiarism, we know how these two things relate and mesh together. Now the question is, how do we check? So if we go into the documents themselves and treat them as texts, we can see that the first one by T.S. Eliot of Middlemarch, the line is, to be born in the sun and heir to Middlemarch, manufacture and inevitable heir to nothing in particular. Okay. Now the line that is given inside of the other video is only, I am the son and heir of nothing in particular. So we can see that, yes, there is nothing in particular in both of them, that there's this concept of, okay, a son and heir. But this is just taking it for, do we have a, Turnitin match? Do we have the words in the same positions? And this is then where people go, oh, well, I now have to change all the words. And my argument here is that no, because there's a contextualization here. How is this being used in the piece? Is it being used in a dialogue, or is it he's trying to just completely copy this? And in fact, if we look at it in context, the greater context, he says, I am the son and heir of a shyness that is criminally and vulgar. I am the son and heir of nothing in particular. Is that line in the song? And so we can see that it is, in a contextualization, it is a broader commentary upon this. It's missing out this Middlemarch manufacture and this inevitableness. So Morrissey is now, I would say, in dialogue with the piece. Okay. From an academic perspective, we have problems. And that's because we would expect a citation to that. So somewhere inside of the song, it would have to say, this line comes from T.S. Eliot. And that's not how it works in lyrical poetry. Lyrical poetry is not going to go back and cite the things that it is referencing or having intertextuality with. So within the context, the broader context of even what domain are we working, we have to look at how do we do citations. And if we look at it from an academic context, that's very different than a lyrical poetry context. Further to this, when we look at the greaterness of this and what else is out there, where do we get explanations of how did I make this work, is not inside of the work itself. It's inside of the exegesis. So the exegesis are the artist's apologies. So we would have to look at all of the other commentary made by Morrissey. Did he say that T.S. Eliot was an influencer upon him? We see this all the time with interviews with various musical artists. So-and-so influenced me. Well, that's them citing them. That's them referencing them. inside of that culture, inside of lyrical poetry. Okay. Next piece of this that's brought up in that video is the question asked in the film essay about Popcorn Venus. They say, how immediately can we be gratified? How soon is now? And of course, that is where they say that the title of the song comes from. Now, Morrissey, again, inside of his exegesis and his explanation, inside of his life and etc., is a film critic and a huge fan of this sort of feminist film movement. He's written zines about it, he has dialogues about it, he has exegesis about it. So he takes this and he is doing it in homage. And inside of this, it goes beyond just the title of the song that he is referencing this question. He goes back and says, when you say it's going to happen now, well, what exactly do you mean? Because I've already waited too long, and now my hope is gone. That's the lines, the lyrics that are then referring back to this. And this is in answer to the question, in dialogue to the question from the film essay Popcorn Venus of how immediately can we be gratified? How soon is now? And Morrissey says, what exactly do you mean? I don't understand this. Because you're saying it's going to happen now, but I've already waited too long. There was no immediate gratification. What is going on here? And so we can see that now this becomes a question from there. And then we get back into the criticism. There's another quote inside of lyrics by Morrissey, inside of Cemetery Gates, that's referenced. That is, if you must write if you must write prose and poems, the words you use should be your own. Don't plagiarize or take on loan. That's what we do as academics all the time, is we take words on loan. But we put them in context with who is saying them, and we put them in dialogue with ourselves, and we treat it as that. We put that person into the room. So I hope that this kind of clarifies as to how citations and paraphrasing should be used. If you're subsuming the argument yourself and saying, this is my argument, that's where it begins to have a problem, because we've broken this idea of a dialogue. We've broken this idea of you say something and I say something in return. So I hope that kind of clarifies it. I'll try to put links in the description to some other videos. And with that, that's my version of citation on YouTube, is that I'm going to put the videos down in the description. So thank you very much. Good Monday morning, everyone. Brand new week. Looking forward to seeing my class on Friday, and we're going to talk more about these types of issues. So as always, stay safe and wash your hands.